The first thing you need to understand about humans is that they are absolutely, completely, utterly insane. And I should know. I've been watching them for the better part of 3 solar cycles now. Ever since my ship decided to take an unscheduled dirt nap in their primitive little world soil, and my name is Krix-Vel. And yes, before you ask, I'm what these bipedal maniacs would call an alien. For eyes, purple skin, the whole cosmic horror package. I used to be a reconnaissance officer for the Galactic Collective back when I had a functioning starship and a shred of dignity. Now I'm buried 6 feet under some human family's vegetable garden, watching their daily circus through my ship's external sensors and wondering how in the 7 hells these creatures haven't blown themselves to smithereens yet, the Hendersons. That's what they call themselves. Marcus Henderson, age 42, works something called middle management, which apparently involves getting yelled at by people above him and yelling at people below him. Revolutionary stuff, really. His wife Janet, 38, teaches small humans how to read squiggly marks on dead tree products. Their offspring, a male designated Tommy age 16, and a female called Lucy age 12, spend most of their time staring at glowing rectangles and making incomprehensible noises. For 3 years, I have watched this family through my sensors, and let me tell you, it's been more entertaining than a Zephyrian death match. These humans don't just live their lives, they stumble through them like drunken space pirates at a wedding. They argue about everything, from what colored liquid to consume in the morning to which entertainment program to absorb through their visual receptors. It's chaos, it's madness, and it's absolutely fascinating. But today, everything changed. Dad, the sprinkler system is acting weird again, Tommy announced, bursting through the back door like his tail was on fire. Not that humans have tails, which is another design flaw in their species if you ask me. Marcus looked up from his newspaper, another primitive information distribution method these creatures inexplicably cling to. Weird how, son. There's this huge brown patch in the lawn, and the sprinkler head keeps shooting water sideways instead of up. Mom's gonna flip when she sees what happened to her tomatoes. Oh, wonderful. My ship's hull breach had finally started affecting their irrigation system. I've been dreading this moment for months. The external hull plating had been slowly degrading, and apparently, it was now interfering with their primitive water distribution network. Janet Henderson emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a cloth covered in tiny pictures of fruit. Humans and their decorative textiles, I swear. What about my tomatoes? Her voice had that particular tone that made even an alien warrior like me want to hide under a rock. They're kind of sideways now, Lucy chimed in helpfully, appearing from wherever 12-year-old humans materialize from. And there's this weird metallic stuff sticking out of the ground. My 4 hearts stopped beating for exactly 2.7 seconds. Metallic stuff? Oh no. Oh no. No, no, no. Marcus Henderson set down his newspaper with the kind of deliberate calm that usually precedes either enlightenment or complete disaster. In my experience with humans, it's almost always disaster. Show me, he said. The entire Henderson clan trooped into their backyard, with me watching through my external cameras like some kind of cosmic voyeur. And there it was, my ship's primary communication array, gleaming in their yellow star's light like a beacon of technological superiority, sticking out of their lawn like the world's most expensive garden ornament. Huh, Marcus said, which is apparently the human equivalent of processing complex information. That's definitely not supposed to be there. Lucy knelt down and poked the antenna with her finger. I nearly screamed. That antenna was worth more than their entire planet's gross domestic product, and this tiny human was treating it like a shiny stick. Don't touch it, Janet snapped, grabbing her daughter's hand. We don't know what it is. It could be dangerous, or radioactive, or some kind of government thing. Tommy pulled out his communication device, one of those primitive rectangles they are constantly attached to. I'm going to post this online. This is so going viral. You absolutely are not, Marcus said firmly. Nobody's posting anything anywhere until we figure out what this is. Smart man. Not that intelligence would help him when the Galactic Collective showed up looking for their missing reconnaissance vessel. I watched through my sensors as the family stood in a circle around my antenna, like some sort of technological seance. We should call the police, Janet suggested. And tell them what? That we found a space antenna in our backyard. Marcus ran his hand through his graying hair. They will think we are crazy. We could call the news, Lucy offered. Channel 7 loves weird stuff like this. Or the military, Tommy added. They probably know what this is. The military. Oh, that's rich. These humans and their pathetic military technology. I have seen their weapons. They're still throwing metal projectiles at each other like primitive cave dwellers. Meanwhile, my ship's defensive systems could level their entire continent before their generals finish their morning coffee. But here's the thing about humans that makes them simultaneously the most dangerous and most ridiculous species in the galaxy. They don't know when to quit. Where any other species would see advanced alien technology and either worship it or run screaming, humans see a puzzle to solve, a challenge to overcome, an opportunity to poke things with sticks until something interesting happens. Marcus Henderson proved my point by grabbing a shovel from their tool storage facility. Let's see how deep this thing goes. Janet grabbed his arm. Marcus Henderson, you are not digging up our backyard based on some weird antenna. Janet, honey, look at this thing. It's not from around here. The metal's too perfect, too smooth. And look at these symbols. He pointed to the collective markings etched into the antenna's base. This is either the most elaborate prank in history, or we have found something incredible. Lucy squinted at the markings. Those look like the symbols from that sci-fi show Tommy watches. The one with the blue aliens who shoot lasers. Those are totally different symbols, Tommy protested. These look more like, I don't know, like mathematical equations or something. Mathematical equations. Huh. Those equations are actually my ship's identification codes, maintenance schedules, and a rather unflattering assessment of human intelligence that I filed 3 years ago. But sure, kid, mathematics. Marcus made the executive decision that all human males seem genetically programmed to make when faced with the unknown. He started digging. Janet threw her hands up in exasperation and went back inside to make what they call stress coffee, which is apparently different from regular coffee in that it contains more anxiety and muttered complaints about husbands. Tommy and Lucy, however, stay to watch their father systematically excavate my ship's communication array. With each shovelful of dirt, more of my vessel became exposed. First the antenna housing, then the primary sensor cluster, then the navigation beacon. Dad, Tommy said quietly, this thing is huge. And he was right. My ship is a collective Class 7 reconnaissance vessel, roughly the size of their primitive aircraft they called jumbo jets. The fact that it had been buried in their backyard for 3 years without detection spoke more to human observational skills than to my ship's cloaking technology, which had failed approximately 37 minutes after impact. Marcus leaned on his shovel, breathing heavily. Humans and their inefficient respiratory systems. I need to call someone. This is way beyond a backyard project. Who are you going to call, Dad? Ghostbusters. Lucy giggled at her own reference to their primitive entertainment media. I'm thinking more like the university. Professor Williams might know what to make of this. Professor Williams. I accessed their local information networks, a laughably simple task given their complete lack of cybersecurity protocols. Dr. Rebecca Williams, professor of aerospace engineering at the local educational institution, published 17 papers on theoretical propulsion systems, holds 3 patents on experimental engine designs, and, according to her personal communication logs, has a disturbing obsession with something called conspiracy theory podcasts. This should be interesting. Marcus pulled out his communication device and made contact with Professor Williams. For what I could intercept of their conversation, she would arrive within the hour, and she was bringing equipment. Human equipment, which meant it would be roughly as sophisticated as a stone hammer, but equipment nonetheless. Janet returned from the house with a tray of liquid refreshments and what appeared to be small circular food items. Humans and their compulsive need to consume calories during every significant event. I can't believe I'm saying this, but maybe we should document everything before more people get involved. Lucy perked up. Can I take pictures? Just for us. Marcus clarified. Nobody else sees anything until we know what we are dealing with. For the next hour, I watched the Henderson family systematically photograph, measure, and examine my communication array with the kind of methodical precision that would have impressed even a collective scientist. They weren't just gawking at alien technology. They were studying it, analyzing it, trying to understand it. And that's when Professor Williams arrived. Dr. Rebecca Williams was not what I expected. Based on her academic profile, I had anticipated another bumbling human academic. Instead, a tall woman with silver streak hair and sharp eyes climbed out of a vehicle loaded with scanning equipment that, while primitive by collective standards, was actually somewhat impressive for their technology level. "Marcus, show me what you found," she said without preamble. The professor took one look at my antenna array and went completely silent. For exactly 43 seconds, she stood perfectly still, her scanning equipment forgotten, just staring at the exposed section of my ship. "Rebecca," Marcus prompted, "what do you think?" Professor Williams knelt down and examined the hull plating with a magnifying device. Then she pulled out what appeared to be a radiation detection instrument, then a metal composition analyzer. With each scan, her expression grew more intense. "Marcus," she said finally, "I need you to listen to me very carefully. This is not human technology. The metal composition is unlike anything in our periodic table. The construction techniques are beyond our current manufacturing capabilities. And these symbols," she traced the collective markings with her finger. "These symbols follow mathematical principles that we are only beginning to understand." Lucy raised her hand like she was in school. "So it's like definitely from space?" Professor Williams looked at the 12-year-old human with the kind of respect usually reserved for fellow academics. "Lucy, I think what your family has found is the most significant discovery in human history. And that, my friends, is when everything went completely, absolutely, utterly insane. Because while Professor Williams was explaining the significance of their discovery, and while the Henderson family was trying to process the fact that they had an alien spacecraft buried in their backyard, my ship's proximity sensors detected something that made my four hearts skip several beats in sequence. .3 military aircraft, approaching fast from the southeast. Apparently, someone had been monitoring local communication networks for keywords like alien technology, spacecraft, and most significant discovery in human history. The humans' own surveillance systems had betrayed them, and now their military was inbound to investigate. "Professor Williams, I accessed the Henderson family's communication network and spoke through Tommy's phone speaker. You have approximately 4 minutes before military aircraft arrive at this location." The entire group spun around, staring at the device in Tommy's hand like it had grown tentacles. Did my phone just talk to us?" Tommy stammered. "Not your phone, young human. My name is Krix-Vel, and I'm the pilot of the vessel you have been excavating. We need to have a conversation." Now, the silence that followed my introduction lasted exactly 7.3 seconds, which is apparently how long it takes for human brains to process the concept of talking alien technology. Marcus Henderson broke the silence first, because of course he did. "Did the alien spaceship just introduce itself through my son's phone?" "Technically, I'm communicating through your local wireless network," I corrected. "Your son's device is merely the output mechanism." "But yes, Marcus Henderson, the alien spaceship just introduced itself." Now about those incoming aircraft, Professor Williams grabbed Marcus by the shoulder. "We need to get this covered up. Now, before they arrive, cover up a spaceship." Janet Henderson had apparently reached her breaking point. "Rebecca, it's the size of a house. Not the whole ship," the professor said quickly. "Just the exposed section. Make it look like a normal excavation project. Gardening, pool, installation, anything but alien contact." Lucy looked around at the chaos developing in her backyard. "Why don't we just tell them the truth?" The collective groan from every adult present answered that question beautifully. Even I transmitted what humans would recognize as a sigh through their communication device. "Young Lucy," I said, "your species has a rather unfortunate history of responding to the unknown with violence first and questions later. Military personnel discovering an alien vessel in a suburban backyard would likely result in what you call a major incident. Tommy stared at his phone like it might bite him. This is so messed up. I'm talking to an actual alien. Focus, people. Professor Williams snapped. We have maybe 2 minutes. The next 90 seconds were a masterclass in human improvisation under pressure. Marcus grabbed a tarp from their storage shed and threw it over my exposed antenna array. Janet ran inside and returned with gardening tools, scattering them around the excavation site. Lucy and Tommy started moving potted plants to create the illusion of a landscaping project. Professor Williams, meanwhile, was frantically packing her scanning equipment. I'm just a family friend helping with yard work, she muttered. Just a family friend helping with yard work. The sound of rotor blades grew louder. 3 military helicopters appeared over the tree line, circling the Henderson property like mechanical vultures. I watched through my external sensors as they established a perimeter around the neighborhood. Act natural, Marcus whispered, which immediately caused his entire family to move like poorly programmed robots that a black vehicle pulled into their driveway, followed by 2 more. Military personnel emerged, led by a woman in uniform with enough decorative metal on her chest to stock a small jewelry store. Colonel Patricia Reeves, according to my scans of their military database, specialized in unusual phenomena investigation, which was apparently their bureaucratic term for weird stuff we can't explain. Colonel Reeves approached the backyard with the confident stride of someone accustomed to finding answers to difficult questions. She surveyed the scene with sharp eyes that missed absolutely nothing. Mr. Henderson, I'm Colonel Reeves, United States Air Force. We received reports of unusual electromagnetic signatures emanating from this location. Marcus leaned casually on his shovel, trying to project an aura of suburban normalcy. Just doing some yard work, Colonel. Spring cleaning, you know how it is. The Colonel's gaze swept over the hastily arranged gardening supplies, the nervous family, and Professor Williams attempting to hide behind a rake. Mr. Henderson, our satellites detected energy emissions consistent with advanced propulsion technology. In your backyard. Tommy chose that moment to prove that human teenagers have absolutely zero survival instincts. That's probably just my gaming computer. It runs pretty hot. Colonel Reeves looked at the 16-year-old like he had just claimed responsibility for inventing faster-than-light travel. Your gaming computer, son? Tommy, honey, why don't you go inside and check on things, Janet suggested with the kind of parental diplomacy that could prevent interstellar incidents. But the damage was done. Colonel Reeves had noticed the inconsistencies. The fresh excavation. The high-end scientific equipment poorly concealed behind gardening tools. The family's collective nervous energy that practically screamed, "We are hiding something massive." Professor Williams, the colonel said, apparently recognizing the academic. Interesting coincidence, finding you here. Just helping friends with some landscaping. Professor Williams replied with all the conviction of someone reading from script. Colonel Reeves nodded slowly. And this landscaping project just happened to coincide with unprecedented energy readings from orbit. The situation was deteriorating rapidly. I calculated 17 different scenarios, and in 14 of them, the Henderson family ended up in military custody while my ship became the subject of classified government research. Unacceptable outcomes, all of them. Time for direct intervention that I activated my ship's primary communication array, overriding every electronic device within a 2-mile radius. Every phone, every radio, every military communication system suddenly carried my voice. Colonel Patricia Reeves, service number 7742 Alpha Delta, current assignment classified under Project Blue Sky. I am Krix-Vel of the Galactic Collective, and I formally request diplomatic contact under the universal protocols of first contact. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Military personnel reached for weapons that would be utterly useless against my technology. Colonel Reeves froze mid-step. The Henderson family looked around like they expected cameras to reveal this was all an elaborate prank show. Furthermore, I continued, I have been monitoring your species for 3 solar cycles, and I have concluded that humanity possesses qualities that make them uniquely valuable to the galactic community. I am prepared to share this assessment with appropriate authorities. Colonel Reeves slowly lowered her hand from her sidearm. You have been watching us? For 3 years. Correct. Specifically, I have been observing the Henderson family, who have demonstrated remarkable characteristics that challenge conventional assumptions about human behavior. Marcus looked around at his family, then at the tarp-covered alien technology in his backyard. What kind of characteristics? Curiosity without destructive intent. Intelligence paired with caution. The ability to cooperate under pressure. And most importantly, kindness toward the unknown rather than fear. Lucy stepped forward, apparently immune to the cosmic significance of the situation. You've been watching us this whole time? That's kind of creepy. Lucy, Janet hissed. But I found myself transmitting what humans would recognize as laughter. Young Lucy, your directness is precisely what I mean. Most species encountering superior technology respond with either worship or aggression. You respond with honest criticism. It's refreshing. Colonel Reeves was clearly struggling to maintain her composure in a situation that had moved far beyond her training manual. You said something about sharing an assessment with authorities? Indeed, your species is on the verge of joining a much larger community. The Galactic Collective has been debating humanity's readiness for contact for several cycles. My observations of the Henderson family have provided crucial data for that evaluation. Tommy raised his hand like he was in class. Wait, we are being graded? By aliens? Every species undergoes evaluation before contact. Most fail. They demonstrate aggression, territorial behavior, inability to cooperate beyond tribal boundaries. Humans are different. Professor Williams stepped out from behind her rake, scientific curiosity overriding caution. Different how? You adapt. You learn. You form bonds across genetic lines, ideological differences, species barriers. The Henderson family welcomed me as an observer for 3 years without knowing I existed. When they discovered my presence, their first instinct was protection rather than exploitation. Marcus looked at his family, then at the military personnel surrounding his property. What happens now? Now, Colonel Reeves, you have a choice. You can attempt to seize my vessel for military research, which will result in the collective classifying humanity as a hostile species and implementing containment protocols. Or you can facilitate proper diplomatic contact, allowing humanity to join the galactic community as equals. The silence stretched for nearly 30 seconds. I could practically hear the calculations running through Colonel Reeves' mind. Career advancement versus species survival. Military protocol versus unprecedented opportunity. What kind of containment protocols? She asked finally. Complete isolation. No contact with other species until humanity demonstrates sufficient social evolution. Current estimates suggest this would require approximately 400 years. Professor Williams stepped forward. And if we choose diplomatic contact, humanity gains access to technologies that will solve your energy crisis, environmental degradation, and resource scarcity. You join a community of 47 species working together for mutual advancement. Lucy tugged on her father's sleeve. Dad, this is like the biggest decision in human history, and it's happening in our backyard. Marcus Henderson looked at his daughter, then at his wife, then at his son, then at the alien technology that had been quietly observing their family for 3 years. When he spoke, his voice was steady. Colonel, I think we should choose the option that doesn't involve isolating humanity for 4 centuries. Colonel Reeves nodded slowly. I need to contact my superiors. This is way above my clearance level. Unnecessary, I announced. I have already transmitted formal contact protocols to your United Nations, your major governments, and your scientific communities. Initial meetings will begin within 72 hours. Tommy stared at his phone. You just casually started first contact while we were standing in our backyard. Tommy Henderson, your family taught me that humans are capable of handling extraordinary situations with grace, humor, and remarkable adaptability. If the Henderson family can accept an alien observer for 3 years and respond to first contact with curiosity rather than fear, then humanity as a species is ready for the stars. Janet Henderson, who had been quietly processing everything, finally spoke. So what happens to us? To our family? You continue living your lives, I replied, with one significant difference. The Galactic Collective would like to offer the Henderson family the position of humanity's first cultural liaison family. You would help other human families prepare for contact, sharing your experience and demonstrating that aliens are not monsters to be feared, but neighbors to be welcomed. Lucy grinned. Do we get to travel to other planets? Eventually, yes, along with any other humans who choose to accept the invitation. Colonel Reeves shook her head in amazement. This is the strangest first contact scenario anyone ever imagined. Colonel, I said, humans have a saying about extraordinary circumstances requiring extraordinary measures. Your species is about to become part of something magnificent. The Henderson family proved that humanity deserves that opportunity. Marcus looked around at his backyard, now filled with military personnel, alien technology, and the promise of an entirely different future. Well, honey, he said to Janet, I guess we're not just installing a sprinkler system anymore. And that, my friends, is how a suburban family's minor irrigation problem became humanity's first step toward the stars. Because sometimes the most important discoveries happen not in laboratories or government facilities, but in ordinary backyards, discovered by ordinary people who respond to the extraordinary with curiosity, kindness, and the simple human question, what happens next? But the story doesn't end there. Oh no, it gets much more interesting. 3 days later, the Henderson backyard had transformed into something resembling a cross between a diplomatic embassy and a science fair. Representatives from 12 different nations sat at folding tables borrowed from the local community center, while my ship's hull gleamed in the afternoon sunlight, finally fully excavated and magnificent. President Martinez herself had arrived that morning, along with delegates from the European Union, China, India, and half a dozen other major powers. They sat in lawn chairs around picnic tables, negotiating humanity's future while Janet Henderson served iced tea and homemade cookies. This is surreal, Dr. Williams whispered to Marcus as they watched the Secretary General of the United Nations take notes on a tablet while sitting next to their garden gnome collection. Tell me about it, Marcus replied. Yesterday, I was worried about crabgrass. Today, I'm hosting interstellar diplomacy. The formal negotiations had been proceeding for exactly 4 hours and 17 minutes when Lucy Henderson proved once again that human children possess a unique ability to cut through bureaucratic nonsense with surgical precision. Excuse me, she said, raising her hand during a particularly heated discussion about technology transfer protocols. Can I ask Krix-Vel something? The assembled world leaders turned to look at the 12-year-old who had been quietly doing homework at the kitchen table they'd moved outside for the occasion. Of course, young Lucy, I responded through the communication array they'd set up specifically for these talks. You said there are 47 other species in the Galactic Collective, right? Correct. Are any of them like us? I mean, do any of them have kids and families and normal stuff? The question was so simple, so fundamentally human, that it stopped the entire diplomatic proceeding dead in its tracks. Here were the most powerful leaders on Earth debating trade agreements and defense pacts. And a child wanted to know if alien kids played games and had pets. Lucy, I said, and my voice carried what humans would recognize as warmth. That is perhaps the most important question anyone has asked during these negotiations. President Martinez leaned forward. How so? Most species approach galactic contact as a transaction. Resources for technology. Territory for protection. The Zephyrians wanted exclusive mining rights to asteroid belts. The Crystalline Federation demanded military alliance against their enemies. The Void Hunters simply wanted to know which planets they could conquer. I paused, letting the implications sink in. Lucy Henderson wants to know if alien children play games. She's asking about friendship, about common ground, about the possibility of connection rather than transaction. This is why humanity is special. Tommy looked up from his phone, where he'd been live streaming the negotiations to his friends despite explicit instructions not to. Wait, are you saying other species don't care about normal life stuff? Tommy Henderson, most species view advancement as moving beyond what you call normal life stuff. They see family bonds, recreational activities, and emotional connections as primitive behaviors to be evolved past. Janet Henderson, who had been quietly refilling water glasses for world leaders, stopped mid-pour. That sounds terrible. It is terrible, Janet Henderson. 47 species with incredible technology, vast knowledge, and absolute emotional emptiness. They function like biological machines, efficient but hollow. Colonel Reeves, who had been serving as military liaison, frowned. If they are so emotionally empty, how do they cooperate? Through logic, necessity, and fear. The collective maintains order through precise hierarchies and calculated benefits. There is no joy in their cooperation, no friendship, no laughter. No laughter. Lucy looked horrified. What's the point of being super advanced if you can't laugh? And that, right there, was the moment everything changed. You see, my ship had been recording everything. Every conversation, every interaction, every moment of the last 3 days. But more importantly, it had been transmitting everything back to the Collective Council through quantum communication arrays. The Council had been monitoring humanity's first contact, expecting the usual pattern of aggression, greed, and territorial disputes that characterized most species' initial negotiations. Instead, they were witnessing something unprecedented: at a 12-year-old human expressing sympathy for emotionally empty aliens, at a family serving refreshments to world leaders in their backyard, at a mother worried about alien children she'd never met, a teenager sharing first contact with his friends because he thought it was cool, not because he wanted fame or profit. Krix-Vel came a transmission directly to my ship's communication array. The voice belonged to High Counselor Zep-9, leader of the Collective Council. We need to speak privately. I established a secure channel while maintaining the diplomatic feed. High Counselor, we have been observing your transmissions. The human behaviors you have documented do not match any known patterns in our database. Correct, High Counselor. Humans are unique among all known species. The young female expressed concern for species she has never encountered. The adult female provided sustenance without expectation of reciprocity. The family unit demonstrated protective behaviors toward you despite your superior technology. Yes, High Counselor. There was a pause that lasted exactly 12.7 seconds. In collective terms, that represented serious deliberation. Krix-Vel, the Council has reached a decision. We are prepared to offer humanity something we have never offered any species in the history of the Collective. I felt my 4 hearts begin beating in an irregular pattern. What are you offering, High Counselor? Partnership, not membership. Partnership. Equal status in all collective decisions. Access to all technologies and knowledge. And most importantly, we want human families to serve as cultural advisors to help other collective species remember what they have lost. The implications were staggering. Humanity wouldn't just be joining the galactic community. They would be leading its emotional evolution. High Counselor, with respect, this offer is unprecedented. These humans are unprecedented. Krix-Vel. In 47 species across 12 galaxies, we have never encountered beings who respond to first contact by asking if alien children have toys to play with. I transmitted the collective equivalent of laughter. High Counselor, you haven't seen anything yet. Wait until you meet human grandparents. The secure channel closed, and I returned my attention to the ongoing negotiations, where President Martinez was explaining humanity's position on technology sharing protocols. Krix-Vel, I announced, interrupting the formal discussion. I have just received communication from the Collective Council. Every conversation stopped. World leaders, military personnel, and the Henderson family all turned toward my communication array. The Collective Council has made an unprecedented decision regarding humanity's status. President Martinez straightened in her folding chair. What kind of decision? The Council offers humanity full partnership status in the Galactic Collective, with voting rights equal to all other member species, complete technology sharing, and a formal request that human families serve as cultural ambassadors to help other species rediscover emotional connections they have lost over millennia of pure logical evolution. The silence that followed was broken by Tommy Henderson's phone hitting the ground. "Did the aliens just ask us to teach them how to have feelings?" he asked. "Essentially, yes, Tommy Henderson." Lucy bounced in her chair. "Can we introduce them to pizza? And movies? And birthday parties?" Lucy Henderson, the Collective Council is specifically interested in those exact types of cultural experiences. Marcus Henderson looked around at the surreal scene in his backyard. World leaders sat speechless while his daughter planned interstellar pizza parties and his son live-streamed humanity's entry into a galactic federation. "Janet," he said to his wife, "I think we're going to need a bigger backyard." Janet Henderson smiled, the kind of smile that had been making aliens wonder about human emotional complexity for 3 years. "Honey, I think we're going to need a bigger planet." And that's how humanity became not just members of the galactic community, but its emotional teachers. Because while other species had evolved beyond families, friendships, and fun, humans had evolved with them, proving that advancement doesn't require abandoning the things that make life worth living. The last entry in my mission report read simply, "Humans are not just special. They're exactly what the galaxy has been missing." 3 months later, the first collective cultural exchange program began. Alien children, grown in laboratories and raised by educational algorithms, experienced their first birthday parties in human homes. Ancient species that had forgotten laughter learned to tell jokes around human dinner tables. Beings who had eliminated inefficient emotional responses discovered the joy of crying at sad movies. And it all started because the Henderson family found my ship in their backyard and decided that the appropriate response to alien contact was curiosity, kindness, and iced tea. Sometimes the most important moments in galactic history happen not in Grand Council chambers or military briefing rooms, but around kitchen tables where someone asks if you'd like another cookie and actually cares about. The answer, the galaxy, as it turned out, had been waiting for that question for a very, very long time.